This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. And welcome into episode number 117 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Noah Grant, that's me, joined alongside with my co-host. That's Nick Maxon. Nick, give a wave for the fans here, for those watching on the YouTube channel. It's a pleasure to have all of our listeners here on this Saturday night, moving into Sunday here. Nick, another late recording here on the eve of Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. And what a Stanley Cup Final it has been, Nick. We're going to break that down, of course, in the tail end of the main portion of the show. We also have some more Hockey Canada news, some kind of hot tidbits coming out of this. Very interesting. So we're definitely going to be rocking and rolling through that as well. Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup is going to talk a little bit about some coaching hires that happened around the National Hockey League this past week. And our extra ice session, we're going to take a mini deep dive, if you will, into the Central Division where the Minnesota Wild sit in the NHL and kind of take a look at what has transpired for some of the teams and, more importantly, what each team is working with as they head into next season. Without further ado, let's start with Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
Few news and notes, Noah, with the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup, and yes, a lot of coaching news, and honestly, some that were not surprising, some that were quite a bit surprising. Let's start with one that maybe is a bit surprising. Let's talk about what many would have thought would have been the most sought-after coach in the offseason. Apparently isn't going to coach next year, at least for now. We're talking about Barry Trotz. Speaking with The Athletic, he said, quote, "I've got some things personally that I've got to take care of, family-wise that I've got to take care of. If I said I'd take the job, I think I would have done any team a little bit of a disservice and myself a disservice, because to be a coach in the NHL, it is demanding and it requires your all. It just does. Emotionally, it just does. Mentally, it just does. So he couldn't go down that path. It doesn't mean I'm not going to coach, just not coach right now. I've been doing this for 25 straight years, and I put a lot of stuff on the back burner, and I think it's time. The one thing I do know, and it's a mistake that everybody makes, is you think you've had time, and you don't. So, you know, it sounds like a guy who, honestly, Noah, he's right. 25 straight years, a successful head coach, Stanley Cup winner in 2018 with the Washington Capitals. A bit of a disappointing tenure last season with the New York Islanders. And you kind of get the sense that, when you kind of go out that way, that this is more of just a breather for him. But maybe, does he get a mid-season rejuvenation? It kind of sounds like he's not completely closing the door. It sounds like maybe if a coaching change happens mid-season, maybe he'd be up to it. We saw that with Bruce Boudreau after he took a year and some change off to take the Vancouver job when that opened up after Travis Green was relieved. So I guess, what do you make of this news from Barry Trotz? Are you surprised, as a lot of folks were, when this came out?
Yeah, I mean, I think more of a surprise simply because, he's a hot commodity. I think it's different if, for example, I think somewhat good comparison is maybe Mike Babcock, where his tenure ended in Toronto, and kind of he was put in a situation where maybe it was a better thing for him to step away at his particular career juncture. Right now, I think Barry Trotz is definitely someone who would fit seamlessly into a coaching lineup right now. Mike Babcock was in a situation where I think personally he needed to reevaluate the way that he approached the game and the way that he approached other things going on. Barry Trotz, I don't think, is that guy right now. It just sounds like he's got some family things going on that maybe, I don't know. I'm assuming he's probably got kids, and I'm assuming maybe they're kind of getting to that age, or maybe they're doing some things, or maybe trying to take care of some stuff at home too. So it did sound like the Winnipeg Jets were the front runners, but they're going to have to do coaching search 2.0 for Winnipeg. So I don't really know what to make of it other than that. I hope whatever he's got to take care of, he takes care of, and I hope we see him in the NHL soon.
And I think to your point too, I think he does have kids, and when you do it for so long, and whether it's missed birthdays or missed anniversaries or missed proms, missed homecomings, right? You can kind of, those add up in your head, right? Especially as a father. And I think that if that is indeed the case, and again, I'm speculating, and I don't have any inside information on this, but it definitely kind of sounds like that's maybe what he's describing. Either way, sounds like that he at least won't be a coach, at least when the season opens as of right now. Again, we know the National Hockey League, things can change very quickly. And who knows, maybe he does accept a coaching job at a training camp or maybe in mid-season. We'll have to see. So best of luck to Barry Trotz as he, again, embarks on a bit of a break from hockey, and I think probably well-deserved. Let's go to another maybe surprising turn of events. Let's go down to the Florida Panthers. Instead of giving Andrew Brunette taking off the interim tag and making him the permanent head coach. We talked about this last week. I had concerns about Andrew Brunette and maybe the playoff performance. I also had concerns about whether the Florida Panthers are in win now moment. It kind of seems like they had some concerns too, because they're bringing in the old Jets coach Paul Maurice as their next head coach. How about this guy, right? Fourth all-time in games coached at 1,684, seventh in wins all-time, 775. After he essentially stepped down as head coach from the Jets midway through the season, just said effectively that he kind of felt like it was his time to step away, that he'd been there for a while. And I guess, what do you make of the Florida Panthers not giving Andrew Brunette the job and bringing in Paul Maurice?
Yeah, kind of weird that you have a Jack Adams Award finalist that doesn't end up getting the job. It sounds like the Panthers are going to probably try to give him a significant, role within the team, Andrew Brunette, and try to give him a good offer to see if he'll stay within the team. But that would be kind of a weird dynamic to go from interim coach to being the assistant coach under somebody else. I think a lot of the guys, for better or worse, did like playing underneath him. So you wonder if that maybe moves into more of a managerial role, though I don't feel like Andrew Brunette is really, I see him more as a day-to-day guy within with the players. I don't see him in a press box, in a front office, sort of thing. But, it's a good hire. And one of the things that Florida, their biggest challenge is that with Andrew Brunette and with the Florida Panthers' recent success, a place they really, let's be frank, have not been since 1996. They needed a steady hand to kind of guide them. I think that was the plan when Joel Quenneville came in. We all know how that ended. And Andrew Brunette, of course, is a seasoned veteran, but not at the head coaching level of things. And Paul Maurice does provide that steady hand. The question is, can he take a roster that has some budding stars and some, budding players that maybe weren't expected to be as big a contributors as they ended up becoming last year? If he can rekindle that fire and see if they can go on another run. But a little bit of a surprise. But when you think about it a little bit deeper, I think it makes sense.
And you kind of wonder too if Florida really is looking at a playoff window that they don't see maybe open for very long. Again, with the cap constraints, they've got some of, you mentioned those budding young stars. They're going to be due for some pay raises. You wonder if they're trying to strike while the iron's hot. And I kind of agree with your assessment of Brunette. Mind you, I've interviewed Brunette. I've talked with him personally. Great dude. Fantastic human being, keeps it pretty light, keeps it pretty relaxed. And again, I guess my question would be, how much do the Florida Panthers management think whether it was Andrew Brunette, the coach, or whether he was just simply keeping the systems and the coaching structure of Joel Quenneville. You almost wonder if that played a part in their decision as well. Tough for Andrew Burnett either way, no question. I hope he ends up with a role somewhere on some team. I definitely think he deserves to be in an NHL spot. The question is with whom and with what title will be. So maybe not surprising news when you consider the coach, but maybe a little bit of a surprise in terms of where. Pete DeBoer, who just always seems to find suitors at his door whenever they need a head coach, goes to Dallas.
Suitors literally and figuratively in this case.
I know, really, right? So you like what I did there. A 4-year deal, $4.25 million for Pete DeBoer, so a pretty healthy contract, $9 million total. 513, 379, and 123 record in his over 1,000 games coached, over 14 NHL seasons. Again, spent time with New Jersey, then San Jose, then Vegas, and now with Dallas. 68 and 55 postseason mark. Started his coaching career with, well, how about that? The Florida Panthers in 2008. Funny, I listened to the press conference, and the first thing he said was, well, Dallas needs to score more. Well, no kidding, Pete. They were one of the least scoring teams in the National Hockey League. And I think, obviously, Noah, we talked about the Dallas Stars a little bit in terms of maybe this is their biggest area that they have to improve on, especially with the likes of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin not really living up to those big contracts. And Pete DeBoer, if there's one good thing that Dallas Stars fans could take is he gets immediate results. The question is he the one with the immediate results? Can he get that into the deep postseason, which he's only been really at once with San Jose back, was at 17 with Pittsburgh?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Nick. Some would say the Dallas Stars needed to score more last year, but I would argue that the Vegas Golden Knights needed to win more last year.
Especially down the stretch, yeah.
Yeah, playoffs, huh? Correction, he is $4.25 million annually, so over the course of 4 years, $17 million for him over the life of that contract. So,
holy cow, did I do my math wrong? Holy cow.
Yeah, it's one of those nights, and the question is, did Dallas do their math wrong or not? We've heard rumblings about Pete DeBoer and kind of the way that he's handled some media things and some internal things within the locker room.
Thanks to Alan Walsh.
Yeah, and you wonder if that carries over. And it's kind of interesting. Some of these teams seem to have similar veins in which their storylines go, where, you think about Dallas and kind of the head coaching soiree that they've had. And they've had a couple of head coaches who have gotten into some things or had some weird tenures there too. Pete DeBoer maybe kind of fits that mold of another coach that might be added to that list unless he can find a way to turn things around. And when I say turn things around, I mean, he hasn't been a bad coach by any means, but I believe it's been does he have a Stanley Cup? I don't even think he does.
No, he does not. He's got 2 appearances with San Jose and also with New Jersey.
Yeah, back in 2012.
But not a cup ring, at least that I know of as a head coach.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. So, interesting to see what Dallas does. But Dallas, their first stepping stone has been laid here. The foundation is there. The question is it going to be a concrete tower or a rickety shack? We'll have to find out.
And again, no assistant staff as of yet, because with Rick Bowness, the entire assistant core, that was Scott Stevens. Who else am I thinking of? Who was there? Bigger names. Anyways, a couple more coaching spots to fill again with Dallas. Yeah. So not quite done there. This is an interesting one. Chicago, Montreal assistant coach Luke Richardson will be the next Blackhawks head coach. 53 years old, playing career spanning over 1,400 games, 6 different teams, 201 career points. Also promoted Megan Hunter to assistant general manager, making her the 3rd woman to currently hold that position in NHL history. Hunter was a star at Wisconsin from 2000 to 2004. I've heard that their program is okay. For the Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award as top collegiate player in the country in 2001. Carolyn Pilch, I believe is the name, was also promoted to director of player personnel. And a couple of other things. Former NHL players that will stay the course. Mark Eaton will remain as assistant GM of development. And also Soupy, Brian Campbell, will keep his role as hockey operations advisor. So a lot of positives about this coaching hire with Chicago. Again, a guy that has apparently been probably more deserving of a head coaching spot a long time ago is finally getting his shot. What do you make of the move here by Chicago here, Noah?
Actually, the first thing that I thought of when I was going through the notes, I mean, 201 points. Yes, he was a defenseman. Pretty impressive. 1,417 games for him. That's an impressive career. And, like when you think of Luke Richardson, it's not a name that sticks in your head as like, oh, prominent NHL guy. I mean, he wasn't exactly, a standout player on any of the teams he played for, but carved out a pretty darn nice career for himself. That's a lot of longevity. So we'll have to see if his tenure stays the same way as a head coach with Chicago. But yeah, done a fantastic job in Montreal. He's been there since 2018. Obviously had some AHL gigs and kind of bounced around there too, but this is going to be his first kick at the can. However, you wonder with the way that Chicago's roster is currently structured. The question is, where is their roster? And beyond that, just
where is it going?
Jeremy Colleton and his tenure being the youngest coach at 33. You wonder if Luke Richardson falls into the same trap. You hope that he doesn't. You hope that Chicago turns it around. But again, it's a situation that is potentially ripe for a head coach to turn things around, but it's potentially ripe for yet another dumpster fire that has been the theme as of late in Chicago. I think he's going to do a great job. I think he's a great hire, especially, he's been underneath a couple of different coaches in Montreal in the mecca of hockey, essentially, and gotten to learn a lot there. And obviously has that playing experience like we just talked about. So I think he's going to do okay, but he's definitely jumping on a ship that is half singing and looking for some patchwork, I think.
Looking more than just patchwork, looking for a place to get the hell off the ship, at least in my opinion. Well, and to your point, I think, you talk about a trap, right? You almost wonder, because there's no question that, at least from the NHL circles that have been, talking about him and his experience, again, as I mentioned before, it seems like he's had his name out there from a lot of the media that's out there that that's covered his career. It's like, why hasn't this guy already been a head coach? And you kind of wonder, Chicago, is this the head coach that's going to maximize what's left effectively of Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews? Will Alex DeBrincat be there? There's big question marks surrounding the youth of this organization. And is he, meaning the head coach, is he essentially trying to squeeze every bit of life out of this franchise before, say, the bombs get dropped? You kind of hope that's not the case for the coach. A lot of things uncertain in Chicago for sure, especially on the roster front. And again, some answers may be coming sooner than we think, maybe so much not. Again, we talked about this a little bit in depth in last week's show, but you do hope that, again, Luke Richardson does a great job. I think he will. Let's go to some not surprising moves. The Oilers do officially ink Jake Woodcroft, who was the interim head coach, to a 3-year extension. No surprise there. Was the best record after he took over in February. So congratulations, John Woodcroft. He will do just fine. Jay Woodcroft. Also not surprising, Patrice Bergeron expected to sign at least a 1-year deal returning to Boston. Question is, how much? There's some cap issues in Boston, so that's going to be the big factor there. Coveted free agent forward Andrei Kuzmenko is going to sign with the Vancouver Canucks. 26 years old. How about this? He can only sign a 1-year entry-level deal at a maximum of $925,000, again, because of his age, right? So again, entry-level deals, a lot of it is based on your age and what you can earn. How about this? Winger finished second in the league's points race with 20 goals, 33 assists in 45 games in the KHL, 14 points in 16 playoff games for SKA St. Petersburg. And I think that's maybe a question we have to answer maybe the next couple of shows. What the heck's going to happen with the KHL next season if things are still continuing over across international borders? But how about this? Vancouver continuing to stockpile now that Jim Benning is out of the realm and Travis Green no longer there. There's some promising signs. Vancouver made a late push, unfortunately make it work out to get into the playoff push. But again, just some little tidbits there for you.
Yeah, a couple of question marks, I think, with JT Miller and Brock Besser moving into the offseason for the Canucks, obviously. So, but they do have a young stud in Quinn Hughes. He's got one of the tidbits that will be part of another piece that we're going to talk about in just a few moments here. Notwithstanding, the NHL did unveil its first and second team All-Stars for the season, as well as the All-Rookie squad. The first team All-Stars, Johnny Gaudreau, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Cale Makar, Roman Josi, and Igor Shesterkin, rounding out the grouping of 6 for the first team, all well-deserving. I would say that there was no name that was left out of there that, should have been in there. All of them, fantastic seasons for them. Second team, Jonathan Huberdeau, Connor McDavid as a second team All-Star. You love to see it.
That, huh?
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk, Victor Hedman, Charlie McAvoy, who I thought had a quietly productive season, and Jacob Markstrom of the Flames in that group. And then the all-rookie team, couple of really good players that I think are going to continue to help their teams for a long time. Michael Bunting of the Maple Leafs, Lucas Raymond, who had a great season with the Red Wings, as well as Moritz Seider, Trevor Zegras as well. Those three names are going to come into play very quickly here. Alexander Carrier, good little season for him, by the way.
Yes,
playing for Nashville, and then Jeremy Swayman of the Bruins, who I think maybe could have gotten more time had things transpired out even more appropriately, but made the most of the season he had. So very deserving, I think, all of them. NHL award news, somebody very deserving of an award. How about two of them? Austin Matthews winning both the Hart and Ted Lindsay Award as the NHL's most valuable player, voted on by both the media and his peers. So the media votes on the Hart and the peers vote on the Ted Lindsay Award, beating Connor McDavid and Igor Shesterkin for this award, Nick.
Yes.
The argument always kind of goes through, because we talk about the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the league. Now, the MVP of the league is not necessarily what people would define as the best player. I think a lot of people would look and say maybe Connor McDavid is the best player just by his point production. But, why is Austin Matthews the pick here in Toronto? And if you look at Maple Leafs history, Toronto does not have a history of a lot of award winners up at this level.
No, in fact, there's talk that is Austin Matthews the best Maple Leaf of all time, even going that way. So Hart Trophy, Hart's of the team, right? That's really what it's MVP of their franchise. And more so, if this player is not on their roster, are they the same team? I think that's a better way to look at it. No, the Maple Leafs are not even close to the same team if Austin Matthews is not in that lineup. Over 60 goal season. Again, just we saw it when his 4-goal performance against the Ottawa Senators in his rookie debut. Just an incredible lightning quick release. Big body. He's been getting better defensively. Can skate well, can read, playing the power play, you name it. He's just an all-around great player. Deserving of that award. And again, when the media and the players agree on something, that's something. That doesn't really happen all the time. Especially if it's Toronto related. Let's be real. That never, ever happens.
Well, one of your
Phil Kessel.
One of your picks, and the actual award winner actually agreed on something too. Congratulations. Igor Shesterkin did edge out Jacob Markstrom and UC Saros for the Vezina as the NHL's top goaltender. Cale Makar beating Roman Josi and Victor Hedman for his first ever Norris Trophy. He was actually in attendance for the NHL Awards and then played in the Stanley Cup Final the next night, game number 4. 86-point season at age 23. That's all right, isn't it? I would say.
Well, let's go back to Luke Richardson, 203 career points, and Cale Makar almost halved it in one season.
So, all right.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Let's talk about some more points here. This is where Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar come into this list. They are joined by defenseman Moritz Seider, becoming just the third rookie defenseman to reach 50 points in the salary cap era, and he took home the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, beating Trevor Zegras and Michael Bunting. Well-deserved. I mean, he was just on another level. He led the Detroit Red Wings in ice time as a 21-year-old. Incredible.
Points, yes, but I think, again, there's a lot to love about his defensive style of the game, too. There's a lot of comparisons being made, too, in Detroit land about maybe a number 5 guy. Nick Lidstrom, maybe? He does, actually.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill. Not the biggest offensive threat, but smooth skater, and more so just perfect defensive positioning, can really make it really tough to get around him. He forces you into bad areas of the ice, stays with it, never really off his track. He's a great, phenomenal young defenseman in Detroit. Starting with Stevie Y's handprints to build something a little bit, and now with a head coach soon to be filled, right? You don't have a head coach just yet.
Yeah, well, hopefully they get an answer to that question soon. A lot of salary cap space for them too. So
yes, a lot of moves they can make, and big offseason for them as well. After a bit of a still disappointing, I think, by Detroit standards. I think they wanted to be better, but definitely some room to work with. That's for sure.
Yeah, curious to see where Trevor Zegras' Anaheim Ducks carry on this offseason as well.
Yeah.
And then if Michael Bunting, who is essentially found money right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs, going to see if he can continue his success in his sophomore season. Lastly, in awards, one that won't be announced for a while, Tampa's Julian Breezewald, New York's Chris Drury, and Colorado's Joe Sakic are the finalists for the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year award. The winner will be announced at the 2022 NHL Draft in Montreal, so we'll keep you updated on that one. Finally, injury news, not last topic here. New York's Chris Kreider, he underwent successful wrist surgery yesterday. Andre Burakovsky and Braden Point are game time decisions for Game 6 tomorrow night / today, depending on when you're listening, for Colorado and Tampa, respectively. And Joel Farabee of the Philadelphia Flyers is out 3 to 4 months after disc replacement surgery. He had 17 goals and 17 assists in 63 games this past season.
Disc replacement, the same surgery that kept Jack Eichel out of Buffalo. I think so, because if it's a herniated disc. Remember the main surgery for that was fusion. Disc replacement surgery was what Jack Eichel wanted. That's that newer surgery. Pretty sure that's the same one.
You know what? I think Philadelphia needs a lot more help than just a fusion.
They need to unfuse themselves with a certain general manager, but that's just me.
Yeah, hopefully it goes well. But yeah, 63 points in 34 points in 63 games. Not a bad season for Joel Farabee, and we wish him the best of luck in his recovery. And welcome into episode number 117. Noah Grant alongside Nick Maxon. Nick, hitting the main portion of the show here. We do have some scheduling pieces, a little bit of a change here. We are going to have the answer to who our Stanley Cup champion is going to be by the time of our next show, but it's going to come a lot sooner than you think. Yes. And I'm not talking about the winner. I'm talking about our actual show. We're going to be recording on Thursday night. So episode is going to come out on Friday. That's because some scheduling pieces for Nick and I as well. So we'll keep you updated on that, but should be a fun jam-packed show, and we'll have a Stanley Cup champion for that one as well. Before we get into some Hockey Canada news, Nick, also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the Huskies Warming House podcast, I would say 80% got something right. Former St. Cloud State Huskies defenseman Clark Kuster was named the Huskies Director of Operations and Video Coordinator. Why are you pointing at yourself? I brought it up.
Review the tape, bro.
I did review the tape, and I brought it up.
I don't think so.
I brought it up. Yes, I did.
No, I don't think so.
I am 110% positive that I brought it up because I went back and listened to it yesterday.
Previously on NCIS.
I'm curious to see if you have a name in mind. I've got a weird one. It's the only one I've got. And you're going to look at me and you're probably going to say, what are you talking about? Because usually you don't just randomly get coaching gigs at the Division I level out of nowhere, right?
No, you don't.
The body that I'm going to throw out here, Clark Kuster.
I think it makes sense.
Clark Kuster.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
But nonetheless, yes, we did select that Clark Kuster was going to be an assistant coach for the St. Cloud State Huskies. In fact, I do want to provide our listeners with the actual episode that it will be. If you want to go back and take a look, let me see if I can find it. For whatever reason, I can't find it. I believe it's episode 114 is I believe where it is. But nonetheless, yes, Clark Kuster, former St. Cloud State Huskies defenseman, his last year was actually the year that Nick and I were both there together, 2019-20, that season that actually never completed. Nick, what is St. Cloud getting in Clark Kuster as the Director of Operations and a Video Coordinator?
A Director of Operations and a Video Coordinator. No, I'm kidding. They're getting a former captain, assistant captain. They're getting a guy that is, well, as we had known, was not really looking at least from what we had known as professional hockey or a coaching thing. At least that wasn't on our radar when we knew him back in 1920. And then all of a sudden he was assistant coach with the St. Cloud Norsemen, directing them. And his name kind of became curiously popped up. And it sort of made sense. And when it was Nick Oliver's departure became public, and it was very quickly decided that RJ Enga, who was the last year's video coordinator and director of operations, moved to assistant coach. kind of an easier transition, you could say, to still a newer coach to be up in the booth, video coaching, seeing the game with a bit of a bird's eye view, and then again, the operation side of things too. So no stranger to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center, no stranger to maybe some of the players on this squad, no stranger to the city of St. Cloud and the Huskies organization. So the fit seems right. And, again, this upcoming season is going to be, it's going to have some question marks, Noah, to say the least. A lot of new faces coming in, and you kind of hope that with Nick Oliver's departure too, one thing that Nick Oliver was so good at was connecting with the younger players because, again, not far removed, Nick Oliver playing with the squad in 2013. He has bigger ambitions and going to the Fargo Force. So I think with Clark there, you have that younger coach that you can approach, that you can maybe confide in, that you can, really develop a close relationship with. And he can also be sort of that liaison between him and the assistant and head coaches, Brett Larson, Dave Shayak, and again, RJ Enga, respectively. So it's a good fit for, I think, both sides of the pie, and hope to see how the Huskies can turn that into success for the 22-23 season.
Yeah, jumping over from the NHL and the St. Cloud Norseman, he'll join the squad there. Makes sense, I think, to have him in that role, considering that he did play with some of the players that he'll be now coaching. So that would be kind of an interesting fit to have somebody over you that was once your teammate. Thinking of guys like Spencer Meyer, things like that, and RJ Enga is in that assistant coaching role as well, like you mentioned. So we'll have to see, but best of luck and congratulations to Clark Kuster and RJ for their new roles, and best of luck to the Huskies hockey team moving this upcoming season. For those who wanted to check it out, I did do some digging. It was episode number 110, promptly named "Is Clark Kuster the Answer?" Apparently, yes, for St. Cloud. So definitely go back and check that out in the Extra Ice session. More news out of Hockey Canada here. Executives beginning to testify in court this past week, Nick, and we had a lot of highlights actually coming from this here. So, outgoing, and I didn't know that he was outgoing, but Hockey Canada CEO, Tom Rennie, said that no public funds were used to settle the lawsuit, according to CBC's Richard Raycroft. The governing body instead liquidated a portion of investments to cover the costs, per TSN's Rick Westhead. So, and Rennie also did add that Hockey Canada became aware of the alleged incident the day after it occurred, which, whoa. Yeah, the organization recommended players participate in the investigation, but they didn't mandate it. There's problem number one.
Correct.
President of Hockey Canada, Scott Smith, said 12 to 13 players did cooperate in the investigation, which is some good news. Should have been all of them, but 13 is a good.
So in other words, the ones that didn't do it.
Yeah, correct. And he also added that Hockey Canada is probably behind when it comes to proper education initiatives for players. Duh, you think. And also said the organization has dealt with 1 or 2 allegations of sexual assault per year over the past 5 or 6 years, and added that their code of conduct did not cover off-ice behavior, but has since been revised since the time of the incident. So, Nick, let's start with those tidbits first. First of all, what does it mean to liquidate a portion of investments? And number two, what do you make of them knowing of this incident immediately after?
So a couple of things right now, because there's some missing pieces. First of all, liquidate means you're cashing out stock. You're cashing out something that's non-liquid. So you're not going to a checking or a savings and doing a withdrawal. No, you're going, crap, I've got some GM stock and I want to cash this out because I need money because reasons, right? Two, what they failed to address here, Noah, is what was done after they learned about it. I think that's the big missing piece for me, at least, is when I listen to this is, so it sounds like the right folks were aware of it, but then what happened after that? What steps were taken? Was there a delay in anything? Was there, again, we're still, from what I understand, there's still, I think, more testimony to come on this.
Yeah.
And if there's any question that I'm wondering is, okay, so you found it afterwards. So then what'd you do about it? And how quickly did you do those set actions? I think that's the next piece that I'm wanting to know, because again, this goes back to Chicago, right? First of all, it was, we didn't know. And then we found out, no, they absolutely did know very soon after the fact. And then it was, we did nothing for a while. And then that created other problems. So you kind of wonder if Hockey Canada is in a similar boat, whereas what was the timing between them finding out about it and then what do they do about it when, and was the action enough? And I think that's going to be the next step.
Like you mentioned, 12 to 13 players. I'm guessing, you have 22 players on that team. The one that would be missing would be Victor Mete, because he was in Cancun at the time. So I'm assuming that he didn't participate in the investigation because he wasn't there.
Sure.
And then that's going to leave the 8 remaining plus the rest that would be participating in there. So that's a nice round number of 22 if you want to do the math there. Rennie also stated that Hockey Canada didn't do a good enough job supervising its players at the event in question. And he said, quote, "The line was blurred there and we fell short." Now, a couple things that I want to, this quote, I pulled it out because I think it has more significance than an afterthought. First of all,
it does.
Hockey Canada shouldn't have to supervise its players at the event. The precedent should already be set that the players should know not to do something like this. The second piece of this, as we talked about how, being aware of the alleged incident the day after it occurred, well, the initial report from Rick Westhead and TSN had talked about, in the lawsuit that the particular victim, this female, felt pressured and was pressured by these players to not say anything, not participate in a police investigation, not, talk about it to anybody in this sort of thing. Now, is that in conjunction with Hockey Canada? We can't prove that either way, but it goes back to the piece of, even if Hockey Canada didn't have a part in this, they didn't, because they had to have known. They had to have known the 8 players that they probably had an idea because of the rest of the players that were testifying and maybe the players that didn't show up. Not for certain, but they probably had a good general idea. And I'm going to assume that those 8 players heard about it from other players or Hockey Canada or whatever it was. And then they took that information and pressured this victim who they'd already done horrible things to into not going further with this. And that's the scary thing is, regardless of whether or not Hockey Canada had a piece in the 8 players telling her these things, they've set a precedent as an organization for them to feel comfortable not only committing horrendous acts, but then trying to cover them up both individually or potentially as an organization. That's the part that's scaring. And you're giving me this sideways spurt. Let me tell you this, Nick.
I'm not sure if it's that direct of a correlation. And here's why I say that. Because it's possible Hockey Canada knows. Hockey Canada then figures out from the victim, then Hockey Canada says, yeah, we want to talk to this victim. The 8 alleged players find out Hockey Canada wants to talk about it. And it's more so the players understand that if it gets confirmed and there is real testimony, real eyewitness accounts of this, they can't hide behind that indicts them almost, purposefully. So I understand your viewpoint. I just don't know if it's that direct. I'm not sure if we really can say that Hockey Canada was the one pressuring the woman or the victim.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Hockey Canada set the precedent years earlier as an organization so that these players felt not only comfortable, but confident enough to go to this victim of their own accord and pressure her into not participating. That's what I'm trying to say. Sure. Is that they failed as an organization for the last 2 decades that culminated into this moment. So
sure. Now, and here's where I think to the quote, right, which is I'm with you. It's ridiculous to me that you feel like for these players who are on the grand stage and the junior ranks for the world, honestly, not just Canada, that you feel like you have to manage them in that sense. That to me was almost like either like an old GM or like almost like a head coach just trying to protect his own players. That's kind of what it gave off a stench like that to me. I wasn't a fan of that part of that comment.
Yeah.
The other part of it is too, you failed, but what have you done to address that?
Yeah.
I haven't done anything, because if you learn from it and we're just finding out about this and you can say, hey, we understand we found an area that we were lacking in, so therefore we changed it. I'm sorry, but changing the on ice conduct to, this includes off ice, that's not enough. That's not enough. Like, again, we talk about the culture issue that is at hockey, and this gets tied into that. And while I think you and I have agreed on this quite a few times, Noah, that we believe there has to be, I think, required training in this sort of thing, where it's not just telling people, hey, if you're off the ice, you're still representing Hockey Canada, don't be an idiot. It has to go into, let's actually talk about this specific issue and the ways that you can not do this and, not be an idiot. So,
yeah. A couple of moves by government organizations that maybe might move this in the right direction for future things. First of all, of course, as expected, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau commented saying, as a government, we have continually stood up to push back against sexual misconduct and harassment in organizations and workplaces across the country. Hockey Canada is no different. This behavior is unacceptable, end quote. Pretty standard, fair quotation, but it is important, I think, that he did comment on it at least. In addition, the federal government is freezing Hockey Canada's funding until the organization signs up with a federal agency that can independently investigate abuse complaints and issue sanctions. So
we talked about that before too.
Yeah, Pascal St-Onge added they must become a signatory to the Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and address maltreatment in sport to begin receiving those public funds again. And this would give the Office of the Sport Integrity Commissioner control over these abuse investigations. So from what I understand, Hockey Canada did receive is set to receive $14 million from the federal government in 2020 and 2021, and recently applied for $2.2 million to help recover from COVID-19. St-Onge said Hockey Canada will not receive the money until the outlined conditions are met. So good on them for kind of putting Hockey Canada in a position where they're going to have to put up or shut up, so to speak. And I think that it is important in some senses, obviously, for the government to jump in and handle the abuse investigations. Now, the only thing that you wonder is, does the corruption scale go up the ladder on the other side of the government? I have no answer to that because I know nothing about Canadian government. But from what it seems like on the surface, it seems like it's a step in the right direction.
That's what it seems, right? But again, does this happen again? Hopefully, again, it never does. Unfortunately, it's likely to happen again. That's the sad part. And you kind of wonder too, now that these new conditions are there, does the Canadian government hold their end of the bargain, which is this supposed independent investigative group? Did they actually go forth and do what they're supposed to be doing? And, and that's the other thing too, is like, so they don't outline, does that mean that if minors are involved, that they make names public? Does that mean that they're not able to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Does that mean that, if these things, is there, a required report that goes to the government and that gets publicly released? Again, details are the devils of these sort of things, and there's yet a lot of those that we don't know quite yet.
You also wonder, too, my final thought was that how President of Hockey Canada, Scott Smith, had stated that the organization has dealt with 1 or 2 allegations of sexual assault per year over the past 5 or 6 years. I don't read into that heavily because Hockey Canada is a huge organization, and I wouldn't be shocked if there are things that come out every year. My question is, I wonder how Hockey Canada has previously handled some of these things, and you wonder if they've done it appropriately, and if they haven't, what more needs to change at the youth level or at the lower level, because obviously this is a big name story that's getting a lot of coverage, but what about those people that have gone through this process before? So we'll definitely keep an eye on it for sure, Nick. And it's not a fun topic to talk about at all. So let's talk about some fun, shall we? Moving forward, Stanley Cup Final has become interesting again here. Show coming out on Sunday.
For Tampa fans.
Yeah, well, I suppose they're probably pretty stressed. Maybe the Minnesota Wild could get to that point one day. We'll see. But when the show comes out on Sunday, that is the eve of game number 6. Of course, 7:00 Central Time in the evening. And should a game 7 be needed, it will be Tuesday night, same time at 7:00 as well. So it's going to be decided this week before our next show, Nick. Tampa Bay claws back, makes it a 2-1 series, and then Colorado getting a goal. We'll talk about that goal in game 4 a little bit later here, but then Tampa Bay responding in game number 5 to cling on and head back to Amalie Arena for game number 6 in Tampa Bay. Nick, who should really be feeling the pressure here? Should the Avs still feel good that they outshot and outchanced Tampa and it came down to 1 bounce in game 5, or is momentum slowly swinging the other direction?
So if this is game 3, different story. This is now game 6. And I think if you're Colorado, you wanted to secure it on home ice. You wanted to get it done as soon as you possibly can because, as you know, in hockey, nothing is guaranteed in the next hockey game. The good news is you were able to, you took one in Tampa, so you can win there. The question is now, does it become in their own heads? Because it's almost, can you look at it as, like you said, well, we outchanced them, we outskated them. They have a brick wall in net named Andrei Vasilevsky, and it came down to a bounce. Actually, a terribly blown coverage by Colorado's D, overcommitting on the puck to leave Andre Palat wide open in the slot, but that's just me and my dumb hockey takes. Thank you very much. That's my TED Talk for the evening. But no, moving on. It's a 1-goal hockey game, but you almost feel like, from the player's perspective, does a little frustration, does a little nerves kick in because now you're going on the road, and now maybe there's more self-induced pressure to get it done because I tell you what, Game 7s, back on home ice, I mean, there's no laurels in this game. It's the hardest trophy to win in sports for a reason. And again, you don't want to give Tampa life. Tampa's got some life now. They go back home. They've been against before Game 4, they had won 8 straight on home ice in the playoffs. So they're very successful there in front of their own fans. Again, the key for Tampa is that they can get on the board first. That seems to be their saving grace against the Colorado Avalanche. So we'll see. I do think right now the pressure's on the Avs, and you worry if you're an Avs fan, if the players don't start putting more pressure on themselves, do they try to get in? I'll say this. I almost saw that with Nate McKinnon last game. I think there were plenty of opportunities where I thought he would have shot the puck, especially on the power play in a rush situation. He ended up trying to pass the puck. So you almost wonder, do they get in their own heads? I don't know. Do you agree with me on this, or am I just an old guy with the hat backwards and I can't think straight?
Yeah, well, Game 5, that Jan Ruda goal can't go in. I think Colorado had all the momentum until that particular juncture of the hockey game, and the challenge here, I think, and I wonder, Colorado has not lost much in this postseason, and they've seemed to bounce back well when they have lost. So I think Game 6, you'd like to get it done. The other thing that I was thinking about, because it's actually, since the salary cap era has begun, it's very rare that teams actually win a Stanley Cup at home. And I wonder that maybe some of the extracurriculars go out when you're on the road. Maybe it might actually be a little bit easier for Colorado to get the job done in Tampa because you don't have the extra piece of trying to win it in front of your home fans. You don't have the extra energy, which obviously can motivate you as a player. But you know that in the Stanley Cup Final, when you go into the other team's building, it's going to be a hostile environment anyway. And sometimes that fuels you, and sometimes teams play better on the road too. And this Colorado team has been very good on the road too this postseason, obviously, as well. So, like you mentioned, you want to get it done in Game 6. I think Colorado will bounce back. The question is, Tampa really didn't get a bounce through the first 4 games of the series, even though they won Game 3. Now they're starting to get 1 or 2 of those. Now, is Colorado going to continue to get those bounces, or will Tampa maybe find one in a game? Tampa has largely been outplayed for the majority of this series, and it's been a while. Yeah. This has been the toughest team in all of the 3 cup runs since the loss to Columbus in 2019. This is the toughest team that Tampa has faced out of any series. And they've come close to meeting their maker a couple times here. And the question mark is, can Tampa find a game? I think if the Avs go into Game 6, and even if they lose Game 6, but it's a 1-goal contest, they're dominating again, at what point does Tampa's luck run out? Playing that style and playing from behind and kind of chasing the game and being opportunistic. But if Tampa has a very decisive Game 6 win, all bets are off for Game 7. I mean, anything can happen in a 1-game shot to begin with. But then if you have Tampa feeling that energy, and then Colorado still being the beast that it is, who would eventually go on to lose 2 games in a row for the first time all postseason and for the first time in almost 2 months, it'd be a wild finish on Tuesday night. So it should be an interesting one, Nick. As we kind of head down the stretch, I don't know. I'm still pulling for the Avs. I think they're going to get it done. But Tampa just seems to never go away.
No, and if you're Tampa, this is exactly what maybe the game plan you're hoping for is you just kind of stick around long enough where maybe you start to maybe get into the heads of the Colorado Avalanche. You might see that Game 6 again. Game 5, Colorado was the better team, and again, it was one defensive error that leaves Palat with 6 minutes to go and a wide open slot shot right on Darcy Kemper. And again, going back to Kemper, I know he's received a lot of flack. That goal, the opening goal, again, no screen, no stick deflection. He just plain missed it. Yikes. If you kind of wonder too, when you're a player and let's give Darcy Kemper credit. He's gotten them to the Stanley Cup Final. Not a single other goaltender they've had previously, Philip Grubauer or Semyon Varlamov, had gotten them there. So he's a big reason why they're there. But you got to wonder too, if you're Nathan McKinnon, Kellen McCarr, Gabriel Landeskog, and you're watching an easy goal like that go in, does that also get in your head too? Does that change the way you play? Does that mean you're a little bit more aggressive on your own defensive blue line? Do you start maybe cheating a little bit to try to make sure he can see the puck? I don't know. It's an interesting time, and this is what I love about the Stanley Cup Final is Colorado coming in as the happy favorite, and yet Tampa, the back-to-back Stanley Cup winner, great playoff success for the course of 6-7 years. They again just find ways to keep themselves in it, and this is a series.
And we talked about winning games on the road. All the pressure is off of Tampa right now. They have nothing to lose, and they understand that if they want to win a Stanley Cup, they'd have to win it on the road. Tampa would have to win it on the road. So, it's going to be interesting. They've been there and done that before. And in Patrick Maroon's case, he's done it 3 times before. Tampa will become the first team to three-peat since the mid-'80s with the New York Islanders dynasty. And Colorado, Colorado, it would be their first cup since 2001. So should be interesting. Our final quick little tidbit here in the main portion of the show, Nick, let's talk about Game 4. Let's talk about that too many men on the ice missed call. I wanted to address this because I know that some people were kind of in an uproar about this. How many, was the length of time lengthy? Yeah, I'll give you that. But sure. How many times does this happen in a hockey game where you don't notice it because the player doesn't get the puck right away or that sort of thing? Now, the rule states, yes, that if the player, if they're not within whatever it is, 5 feet or something like that, from the bench, that they're not allowed to have possession. But again, the only reason that there's a noticing effect on it is because Nazem Kadri ended up with the puck right away. Correct. And, that's the only reason. I know that the Lightning had 7 players on the ice at one point, although barely 7 players. The other piece of this is the argument was that the Lightning have won a similar game against the Islanders the last postseason, that 1-0 Game 7. That was the lone goal that was scored. It happens all the time in hockey. I get the frustration from John Cooper, but the other piece of this is you still got to defend, and Nazem Kadri still had to pick up a puck basically almost in the neutral zone and come and pick his way through 2 defenders and put the puck in the back of the net and beat a world-class goaltender. So, Nick, your first reaction on this, was John Cooper's, reaction justified, or is it a routine hockey play that just got caught up at that particular moment?
How about option C? That was media theater.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't understand what I'm talking about, head coaches at any professional level know that whatever they say, whatever they do, whatever is videotaped, audio taped, the players hear it. They'll lie and say, I don't watch that crap. No, they do.
Yeah.
So he was sticking up for his team at that point, 100%. So I don't look at it as, was it justified? I don't look at it as, was it unjustified? I look at it as he was doing what he felt he had to do as a head coach to try to essentially be the voice for the players at that point. And I think it worked. Now let's actually talk about the play, right? So it's almost like that idiot that you argue with politics or with law that says, but it says in section code 635 that you can't do that.
It's all about how it's interpreted.
Well, yes, but it's also like, okay, cool, you read me the number, big freaking whoop. It's how did we apply this, right? The big application for the NHL and rule change on line changes is, okay, if you're sort of within that 5-foot rule, whatever, their biggest concern is, does it affect the play? That's the big interpretation. We've seen that. In this case, does the line change, which was happening behind the puck carrier, meaning the puck was already advanced, was that line change despite the 7 players in the ice, did that affect Nazem Kadri getting the puck, going through 2D and going on Vasilevsky? No, it did not. So I understand the hockey novices out there. Yes, I'm calling you novices, and yep, come at me, bro. I don't care. If that puck is passed to a player just off the bench, they have possession, and all of a sudden that gets to Nazem Kadri, meaning that extra player is the one helping that puck to Nazem Kadri. Now we're talking an argument. This was a D to forward stretch pass with players changing behind him. This had no impact on that goal whatsoever.
Yeah, and I mean Nazem Kadri was the player that came over the ice, but by the time he got the puck,
I didn't even know he scored.
Yeah, it's and it's one of those things that you chalk it up. One, it's a non-reviewable play, so it's a moot point anyway. And number two, it happens so many times in the game of hockey where if that puck goes off the post, no one's talking about it, no one even knows about it.
Correct.
So
the referees, and I don't know if this is the right way to phrase this, Noah, but because hockey is such a game of flow, right?
Yeah.
I think the big concern with the refs is, okay, like you said, this happens all the time. There's slow changes, there's fast changes, right? If they were to call every too many men on the ice call, we'd have stoppages every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes. And again, when you're a player going up in the system, you're basically like, 5-6 feet. If he's coming to the bench, you just go. Because again, you're trying to get involved in the play. You're not trying to give the opposing team any numbers advantages, either on the offensive zone rush, which usually that's when you're changing, when you're going the offensive zone. So it's embedded in you as a kid when you're growing up to not get caught on the bench sleeping. So again, it's highlighted because it's a playoff game-winning goal. And however, again, didn't affect the play at all.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We'll keep an eye on it. The Stanley Cup Final and a champion will be crowned. Will it be a 3-time champion in the last 3 years, or will it be a new one for the first time since the turn of the millennium? We'll keep you up to date. As always, we're going to head on over to our extra ice session. We're going to talk all things Central Division. And welcome into the Extra Ice session. Nick Maxon joining myself, Noah Grant, here for episode number 117. Our Extra Ice session takes a deep dive into the Central Division. We'll take a look at this past season, of course, and moving into the offseason and the upcoming campaign and what it means for each of these teams in the Central Division. And I have them in order here, Nick, from essentially least successful last season to most successful. So for those who are curious in the Central Division, how it ended up, it was Arizona pulling up the rear with 57 points. Not a great season for them.
About that.
Yeah, Chicago after them. Winnipeg was in 6th place. And those were the only 3 teams to miss the postseason in the Central Division. Nashville and Dallas filled out the wild card spots, followed by St. Louis, Minnesota, and Colorado clinching the Central Division. So, Nick, let's start with the number 8 Arizona Coyotes, who 25 wins, 50 losses, 7 overtime losses for 57 points. I do have each of the teams' cap friendlies pulled up, so projected cap space is just over $33 million. But with that being said,
I think the bigger question is how much you have to spend to get to the cap floor. That's really the number we got to know.
I say, and well, if you're looking for that one, we can always find that one too. But
actually, they have to spend $11 million to get to the cap floor. I got it for you.
Yeah. So,
that's how much they're actually going to spend.
And they have 29 contracts currently signed. So that means that they do, for the upcoming season, they have 3 RFAs on the forward side and 6 UFAs on the forward side, 2 RFAs on the back end, as well as a UFA and 1 UFA in net as well. So, and a couple of guys on injured reserve, 3 of them to be exact.
Yeah.
So, Nick, this Arizona team, they're significantly downsizing in more ways than one. What is the main focus for this Coyotes club going into the offseason and heading into next season?
Get a freaking building to play in. Let's look about this. 3 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks for Arizona. The deep Buffalo Sabre rebuild is on. We'll put it to you that way. And if things work out in their favor, Noah, meaning somehow this summer / early fall, the Tempe City Council approves a motion for a new arena entertainment style spot gets developed. That takes 3 to 4 years. Well, again, you talk about 3 first-round picks, give them a couple of years, you develop, and maybe we're moving into a new building with some veterans. You got some younger talent that's had some NHL experience and maybe do things right. Wait a second. Are we talking about the Coyotes or are we talking about the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, to be fair, half of Vancouver's team pretty much played for them, and now they're all UFAs. But
so it's really for them. I think their sole focus right now is just their youth. Honestly, if we're talking about on the roster, again, a lot of infusion to that. And as long as they don't deal with Chuck Fletcher again, they'll be fine because or maybe they do because they'll get another first round pick out of it. Who knows? Pretty crazy, right? So it's such an up in the air thing, right? Because if Tempe were to call a press conference tomorrow and says, hey, this deal is off, are we really talking about an Arizona Coyotes future in Arizona? I don't know, but let's assume they're there. It's the youth infusion. That's where it is. They still have $990,000 in dead cap for Oliver Ekman-Larsson and retained salary in that trade. What the heck are you doing, Jim Benning? But that's a different conversation. This roster is going to be young. It's going to be raw talent. Some maybe veterans added here and there, but it's going to be another tough season on the ice, I think.
You know what's difficult is you have a handful of names sometimes for some of the poorer teams, with guys that come in that, get their first crack at the NHL. I mean, you look at the Arizona Coyotes roster and it's more a game of who can you find that Karel Vejmelka is going to be the starting netminder for next season. But I mean, on the back end, you have Anton Stralman's cap hit, but Anton Stralman is, Jacob Chychrun and Shane Gostisbehere are really your only other two on the back end that you really even notice. Right. Nick Schmaltz.
Nicoletti's entered the chat because, hey, how about Nathan Smith?
Yeah. Well, forward end, though. We're talking D first.
Well, okay,
so
whatever.
Yeah, so Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Andrew Ladd, just because of name, I guess.
Right.
Lawson Krause, and then you have Alex Galchenyuk, Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, who are all off the books, and then Phil Kessel, who's a UFA at age 34. This is a young roster, and I don't know what the answer is, but the Arizona Coyotes,
more youth,
they're not going to be good. They're just not.
No, they're not. And again, I do think this is by design. I do.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing that Minnesota Wild fans know too well, besides the name Jack McBain, he's on that roster as well. Yep. About that, Arizona was kind of in mediocrity for a while. They weren't super bad, even though they've never really they haven't been really that successful as of late. But they really were never that bad. And some of the moves they make, they would trade away high-end picks or prospects.
Or sign players who are horrible people.
Right. So they've made some bad moves in the past. And you kind of wonder if this is setting up to be sort of that resurgence. Maybe. I don't know. But
we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. Again, on the surface, doesn't look great.
It's a breeding ground for, guys that are looking to make a name. I like Christian Fischer's game, a good two-way forward as well. Travis Boyd has carved out a decent little career for himself, the former Minnesota Golden Gopher. Of course, Barrett Hayton coming over from Florida has made a little bit of a name for himself. But not looking great for Arizona. The seventh place spot, just hiring their head coach in Luke Richardson. That's the Chicago Blackhawks. Projected cap space of just over $20 million. The question marks, of course, are DeBrincat, Taves, and Kane moving in here. They do have 4 RFAs on the front end, no UFAs. So Kirby Doc needs a payday. Dominic Kubalik, who has been a nice little pickup for them. Philip Khrushchev and Dylan Strome, who's 25 years of age. On the back end, Caleb Jones is the only RFA, and then Calvin DeHaan and Eric Gustafson are UFAs, and then both goaltenders and Kevin Lankinen and Colin Delia are both UFAs as well too. So actually, when you look at this roster, not a whole lot of work for Chicago to get done to get some guys taken care of. The question mark is the roster isn't that solid, and they're missing a couple of pieces here. So new head coach coming in. Organization's a little bit tainted with the off-ice stuff that happened last season. Primary focus on the ice. Are you looking to make an off-season splash, or are you just trying to maybe make one or two moves that gets this team pointed in the right direction here? Is it full-scale rebuild, or is it just kind of
not yet?
Repoint?
Not yet, because I do think Luke Richardson has some say in this, right? I do think that they're going to try to see if there's anything he can do. I mean, let's be honest. This is Chicago's last gasp with that. I think so. And I do think you kind of wonder where Chicago is with Alex DeBrincat. Dylan Strome has been rumored to be on the trade block for quite some time now. I know. Yeah. So you wonder if he gets moved again, RFA status. If he doesn't, he goes to UFA status, and he's able to essentially sign with anybody. I could see Chicago almost letting him walk at this point.
Yeah.
So I think I see Chicago as the tweener team that says, hey, let's give this one more go. Let's see if Luke can squeeze some life out of this squad. Again, the big question mark is, does DeBrincat make it to opening day in October? Or does the Chicago Brass have a grander plan and DeBrincat's are going to be off the table, meaning he's going to be traded somewhere, and we're going to see the death of an early 2010 dynasty. It's still unclear for me, Noah. And again, I said from a team perspective, or I should say a management perspective, if you're going to trade DeBrincat for the best return, you do it now. It seems like things are trending that way, but you kind of wonder if you are in the Western Conference, he goes out east just to try to protect him from biting you again. But also the return. Again, the salary cap is not going up very much. So he's got to go to a team with cap space. There got to be assets in return. In Chicago will like a pretty decent haul for this player. What teams have it? I don't know. Chicago, to me, is going to be fighting with Arizona for the bottom of the Central.
Yeah, Connor Murphy and Jujhar Khaira are both on injured reserve. Also, $2.375 million in dead cap from Brett Connolly on a minor league deal buyout penalty. So that's tough. My question for you is this, Nick. Off the top of your head, 69 games played for Dylan Strome. Care to guess how many points he had
last year?
Yeah,
45.
48 points. And I was kind of wondering, if he's a guy that Chicago lets walk and the Wild cannot get Kevin Fiala re-signed, is he a guy, if you're Minnesota, do you look at a guy like that? I mean, that's not bad production.
Maybe. It's not bad, and I think, and again, here's what's funny. Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat were line mates with Connor McDavid in Erie in the OHL. Ooh. I know, right? Who the hell is that? All of them over 100 points in that 2015 campaign. Was able to actually catch them in person against the Sarnia Sting in the first round of the OHL playoffs. That was a hell of a series. But sidetrack back to the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't know. And I say that because Dylan Strome, to me, he's not the biggest kid. And he's a guy that I think if you want him to be productive, needs to be in a top six role. He was demoted from a top six role with Chicago, if that tells you anything.
Yeah, Dylan Strome, 6'3", 200 pounds, 25 years of age, left-handed. And
just hasn't really developed into the player that he was looking like when he was with the Erie Otters. So maybe you take a stab at him if the money's right. But again, to me, he's got to be a top six player. He's not a bottom six forward. If he gets in a position where he is out of the top six, he's as good as dead to me if you're the Wild. So that would be a riskier, I think, signing than more of a proven veteran. But I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. I'm not that fond of Dylan Strome. I'll put it that way.
Of course, still.
His biggest thing is a consistent play. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's almost a ghost.
Of course, him, Dominic Kubalik, Kurashev, and Kirby Dach, all RFAs, so another complicated piece on top of that as well. Moving on to Kevin Cheveldayoff, his Winnipeg Jets with over just over
that guy survive. I don't
$18 million in projected cap space for these guys. As we look forward, 4 RFAs on the forward side. That's Mason Appleton, Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's been in the media recently in kind of a weird light. Jansen Harkins and Evgeny Svechnikov. Adam Brooks is a UFA G6, and then Zach Sanford and Paul Stastny are both UFAs respectively. Everybody signed on defense, all 6 defensemen all locked up, and then Eric Comrie is a UFA G6 as well, backing up Connor Hellebuck in net. I'm trying to see. Just Cole Perfetti is on injured reserve and no dead cap for this squad here. So actually a fair amount of pieces to work with, but it's been the Winnipeg Jets were kind of a team that it's almost like they were a jigsaw puzzle that fit together, and then the schoolyard kid came in and ripped some of the pieces off and then tried to smash the puzzle back together in a different shape, and it kind of works, but it kind of doesn't. And they finished 6th as a result last year. So the question is Mark Scheifele stay? What is the deal with Pierre-Luc Dubois recently? And does Paul Stastny continue to play hockey?
Big questions, right, for Winnipeg. There's even talk of Blake Wheeler's future in Winnipeg. So it's a core that really has, and we're talking the older core again with Blake Wheeler being one of them. I think again, 18 million is not a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
And the big thing here, Noah, and I think this is the big thing with Jets fans, is how much, so imagine this. You have the 2nd overall pick in the 2016 draft. You end up getting Patrick Laine. You end up trading away with Jack Roslovic to get Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is not the same caliber of a shooter. Now, mind you, Patrick Laine is not a number 2 looking pick right now with his performance.
Yeah.
Imagine if Pierre-Luc Dubois, which you talked about media, sounds like he doesn't want to stay in Winnipeg. Imagine him leaving the Jets and that number 2 pick 6 years ago ends up literally you with nothing.
Yeah, Dylan Strome has entered the conversation, by the way.
Right.
60 points in 81 games for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it sounds like more. So he's a year away from signing an extension. And the Steve Dangle podcast, so eloquently, of course, has always talked about this. And they talked about it's almost like he's kind of pressuring Winnipeg to kind of get their core in order and figure things out a little bit here.
I don't blame him, honestly.
And he's got a little bounce back there up in Winnipeg. The question mark here, and again, same podcast mentioning this, Winnipeg Jets fans kind of just riding it out a little bit here. They're in a weird spot where you're kind of waiting for the old guard to kind of change over a little bit. Mark Scheifele, 2 years left on his deal, as is Blake Wheeler. The only real guys that you have signed long-term, Kyle Connor, who had a whale of a season last year.
Good.
Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers, and then Adam Lowry as well, is only 29 years of age and has 4 years remaining on his deal. So other than that, the only defenseman that's long-term is Josh Morrissey, and then Nate Schmidt and Neil Pionk, kind of. So, a lot of question marks for Winnipeg, and they're just, do you expect them to make an off-season splash, or are they really just looking into?
Have to, because Pierre-Luc Dubois is wanting the same thing that Winnipeg Jets fans want. They want some look of what the future is going to look like, and it has been very unclear. They've been kind of stuck in this, older core with Wheeler, and then you have these young up-and-comers with, Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey. So it's like, what is this team, right? There's really no identity. And I think Pierre-Luc Dubois, he is pressuring that management to give him an idea, because if they don't, I think he walks. I think he doesn't want to stay in a mediocre squad. He was with that in Columbus, right? I think he wants to play for a playoff contending team. And let's be honest, Columbus and Winnipeg have a lot of similarities in terms of their roster buildup and, their ability to contend for a playoff spot. So I think he's trying to avoid that. And there's a little bit of a shot across the bow, you could say, with Pierre-Luc Dubois. So I think it's a smart move by him. And I think this will decide, if there is a big splash or two for Winnipeg, whether he considers signing an extension with the club or he tests the free agent market.
Yeah, should be interesting. We are going to put these teams 1 through 8 for our predictions for next season. Coming in at number 5 last year, the final playoff spot, getting bounced in 4 games handily by the Colorado Avalanche. That was the Nashville Predators. Currently sitting with $21.5 million in cap space. They did finish, for those who are wondering, like I said, Arizona 57 points, Chicago 68 with 28 wins on the season, 89 points for the Jets at 39 wins. And then it really gets serious at 97 points, Nashville 45, 30, and 7 for a 5.91 winning percentage. On the forward side, 3 RFAs, Luke Cunnin, former Minnesota Wild draft pick and player, Matt Luff and Yakov Trenin, and then the 2 UFAs, Nick Cousins, and the big one on the forward side, Philip Forsberg at 27 years of age, and then 2 UFAs in the back end, kind of depth defenseman Matthew Benning and Ben Harper, and then third string goaltender David Riddick is a UFA in net, and the dead cap history for 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 6 years remaining. Kyle Turris, $2 million per season for Nashville.
That was so bad.
couple of pieces here. We're starting to get into the territory where there is something to work with this squad. Philip Forsberg is priority number 1, obviously, as I think Luke Cunnin is priority number 2 on this squad. But is Nashville and the David Poile workings, are they looking to make that one big splash they seem to make every offseason, or do they got to look a little bit more internally this year?
It's a great question. Because, I mean, they weren't just outplayed. They got spanked by Colorado. And you kind of wonder what David Poile, who's been there for, it seems like, a few centuries with the Nashville Predators, how much that sweep is going to prompt him to make changes. Now, again, you want to get Philip Forsberg, was it just under $22 million in cap space? He will command a large chunk of that, if not almost half of it, if it's market value, $8 to $9 million a season. So I think if you're Nashville and you're looking at this roster, right, and more so some of the long-term deals, so you still have Matt Duchene for another 4 years, Ryan Johansson for another 3, Mikael Granlund another 3 years, Eli Toivonen for another 4. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot of long-term contracts here. No, and I think the big question is, does David Poile would it be like, okay, there's enough pieces here where if I add a few, maybe we spark another run? I could see that. I'm not sure if he needs a big splash. But again, it's going to a lot depend on what he's got left over after they get Philip Forsberg done. That's priority number 1. Also, please give Connor Ingram some help. My God. And for UC, for UC Saros, I mean, geez, just tough timing for that Nashville squad. I still don't think that changes the outcome in terms of them getting swept, because they were just blown away by the speed of the Avalanche. So you kind of have to wonder. I do think there's another splash or two that Nashville can make to make themselves kind of retool on the fly. But again, the other central teams that we haven't discussed yet are sitting still in a much better spot skill-wise and contract-wise, but that's still going to be a tough task to ask. So you kind of wonder if David Poile will go for the nuclear bomb, or does he go for the microwave dinner to see if he can't turn something out of nothing?
Yeah. The start of this season, a question mark for you, for those who are wondering, for David Poile. This upcoming season will mark how many years with the Nashville Predators? Any idea?
27.
25.
It was 97. That's right.
Yeah, fall of 1997, he was named part of the Nashville Predators, VP of Hockey Operations. Before that, he was with the Washington Capitals since, get this, 1982. Before that,
doesn't go away, does he?
Before that, he was with Calgary and Atlanta since 1977 in an assistant general manager role. So he's been around a while here. Yeah, the Preds are a curious case here. You know, they obviously have Roman Josi, who's been really good. Matthias Ekholm is a good second. Along with that, Mark Borowiecki continues to eat pucks like nobody's business.
More ways than one.
Yeah, Jeremy Lauzon was just re-signed for 4 seasons here. So there are a lot of pieces. They kind of remind me, dare I say, of the Minnesota Wild pre-Kevin Fiala a little bit, where they had a couple pieces. They had that core, and it just seems that the core seems to never go away, but they never seem to really get over the hump either. Nashville, ever since that Cup final in 2017, has kind of been the middleman, where they're not totally crappy enough to get a good draft pick, but they're not good enough to advance past the first round. So we'll have to see how they can kind of advance forward here. But a lot of good pieces. Mikael Granlund, actually, like we mentioned, Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson had pretty decent seasons. I was very curious. Mikael Granlund, why don't we talk about the former Minnesota Wild forward? Let's see how many points. 80 games played for him this season. Any guess as to how many points he had?
61 points.
64. You're doing pretty good on the guesses today. Only 11 goals in the season, 53 assists for Mikael Granlund. I mean,
he's
he always
assist machine.
Yeah, always has been a playmaker, but yeah, some pretty low goal totals. His best goal total season came in the 2016-17 season with a 21 goal season 26 goal season followed by a 21 goal season. He has not eclipsed 20 markers since in an NHL season. So Nashville Predators, number 5 last year, moving into the second half, or the top half of the Central Division. And I say that lightly because this team was not much better than Nashville. The Dallas Stars with $19.5 million in projected cap space. They finished last season 1 point ahead of Nashville, 46 wins, 30 losses, and 6 overtime finishes for them. On the forward side, 2 RFAs, a big one, some guy named Jason Robertson. Had a decent season. Marian Studenic is the other RFA. Vladislav Nemestikov, Alex Radulov, and Michael Raffle are the 3 UFAs. And then on the back end, John Klingberg, the big UFA, as well as Andrei Sekera. And Jake Ottinger is an RFA for this upcoming season. And Scott Wedgwood and Braden Holtby are both UFAs. And then a buried penalty of $2.2 million for Anton Khudobin for this final season coming up this year. So, Nick, we've talked about it so much. The Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn contracts have not lived up to expectations. It has been alleviated by Joe Pavelski, who signed at $5.5 million for next season and pretty much paced the team besides Jason Robertson. A couple of guys that, have been productive, but, how do they solve their scoring woes and how do they stop being so leaky defensively? And do they hang on to John Klingberg on top of that?
That is the big question, is John Klingberg, is it not? I think you need him if you're Dallas. I think you need still that vaunted, very good foot-moving defensive core that I think helps drive the offense. If I'm looking at it correctly, maybe I'm not. This is a curious case because you got 19.35 million in Seguin and Ben. It's a lot of money. Yeah. You got somehow Joe Pavelski, which even at 38 years old continues to perform like he's 22. He's just insane.
Seriously.
He's a Hall of Famer, no question about it. Yep. Will love, whether it's with Dallas, somebody's would love to see him get a shot at the cup again. I think Joe Pavelski is that type of player that deserves a cup run. But yeah, I don't know. Jason Robertson would have to be, in my book, the big off-season signing.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
It would be foolish to let him go, and he's an RFA. So
right. There's plenty of cap space in to work with. Now, again, this team is almost like Edmonton, and it's like even if it's a year ago because they're top heavy. Yeah. Problem is their versions of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, or well, not McDavid and Draisaitl, and when they're not even putting up any sort of offensive numbers. What was it? 2.1 goals per game for Dallas last season. Just not good at all. Their depth behind those two players are not great. Yeah. So there's not, you talk about a team that could make some big changes. You kind of wonder what Pete DeBoer would be looking for. Of course, he said all the right things in the media. Oh, I'm just excited to be here and good pieces. Well, no kidding, Chief. You're not going to say no when you took a head coaching job, but sure. Yeah. There's potential there, but again, we've been waiting to see this unlock since when Lindy Ruff was behind the bench. So I don't know. They need a coach to be able to put it together. I mean, if you look at Pete DeBoer when he took over the Golden Knights job, the Golden Knights under Gerard Gallant was all offense, all on attack. Defense was a bit leaky. He was supposed to come in and kind of hamper that, and I think he did to a degree. And then Pete DeBoer just is kind of like cottage cheese. You leave it in the refrigerator too long and it just gets sour. So I don't know. I don't know how to look at this Dallas squad. I could see them being right where they're at right now at 4. I could see them drop to even as far as say 6. Yeah. You kind of wonder if the Dallas organization looks at Pete DeBoer with a history of instant, bringing a team up. Yeah. If this is their last gasp to do it. And if not, do they just, hit the bomb button? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. It's weird because you look at this roster and you look at some of the players and you're like, man, they really underachieved. And then you look at the roster again and you're like, man, they really overachieved. Like it's this weird mix where you're like, some of these guys you're like, yeah, they were as advertised or better. And then other guys you're like, what the hell happened to them? And yeah, really weird spot. I think having Braden Holtby healthy, even in a backup role, would be a big piece. Scott Wedgwood has been a serviceable backup for a long time in the NHL, but Braden Holtby was actually pretty all right for this Dallas squad. Of course, the coming of Jake Ottinger, we'll have to see if, the true sophomore campaign, so to speak. I know he's been around longer than that, but, if he's truly is the starter, if he really can carry the mail in a full NHL season, as a true starter, so to speak, can definitely help having that veteran experience back there as well, too. So the Dallas Stars, a question mark, finishing in 4th place in that first wildcard spot last season. Moving into the 3 divisional finishers, everyone's favorite, the St. Louis Blues. $9 million in projected cap space. I wish it was -9. It's fine. 2 UFAs, Tyler Bozak, David Perron, the Wild Killer. And then two RFAs, Nico Mikula and Scott Perunovich are both RFAs, and Nick Leddy is a UFA, and then Ville Husso is a UFA on the back end. $9 million in cap space. Somebody's definitely got to go here. Nick Leddy's.
Can it be Perron to the Wild? I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Or if the Wild can't retain one of their goaltenders, or if they can't retain Fleury, how about Ville Husso? Wouldn't happen. But yeah, nice. Nick Leddy's only 31. Of course, Scott Perunovic and Mikula, 23 and 26 respectively. Tyler Bozak, I think, is probably gone. In fact, I failed to know how many points Tyler Bozak had. I felt like
wasn't he injured a lot this last season?
Yeah, he had 12 points in 50 games. So I got to imagine he's probably on the way out the door. So yeah, I'd say David Perron and Nick Leddy, if they could keep them both. I feel like, I mean, you got $9 million in cap space. So David Perron or Nick Leddy, one of them or both of them would have to take a team-friendly deal because I think they want to retain Ville Husso. I really think they do, but they've made this decision before. $6 million shelled out to Jordan Binnington. Are they going to make the same mistake again? Is Ville Husso the guy that is the future? I mean, what do the Blues do here to kind of stay par at the top three in the Central?
I think if you had a choice between Nick Leddy and David Perron, I think still you take Nick Leddy. There was a big reason why they went after him in the trade deadline, and he really secured that back end for them. I think he's a good depth piece for them, for a team that does play a defensive identity type hockey. Which also means Ville Husso as well, right? I think that 1-2 punch, again, Jordan Binnington has proven since his cup run that he can be really good. He can also be quite Swiss cheese-like. You kind of wonder with Ville Husso if that first real starter sort of playoff woes got to him a little bit. And you get to the Kraken, I think he'd be fine. So I think you keep Husso around as well, which means David Perron is sort of the guy who's taking the team-friendly discount. I think David Perron likes it in St. Louis. He's had 2 stints there. But you kind of wonder, too, at the end of his career, I mean, St. Louis is a consistent playoff contender now. But does he want to go for a deeper run? Does he want more money? Where does he want to go? I think, Perron's 33, 34?
34 years of age.
34, yeah.
And it's interesting, you look at the core, especially the forward core. Defensively, they're doing pretty well for the next couple of years, all things considered. Once they figure out the 3 that they've got, everybody else is locked up for the next 2 seasons. And the forward side, really, everybody is locked up for next season. The only 3 that are locked up beyond next season, Braden Shen, Pavel Buchnevich, and Brandon Saad. Nick, how about the UFA and RFA class for next year? For the Blues, let's go with this. Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Ivan Barbashev, Nathan Walker, Logan Brown, and Alexei Torpachenko. That's going to be some money. That's going to be in interesting locations.
And how about Vladimir Tarasenko, right? Going from a guy who requested a trade ended up being a big part of their playoff push and their playoff success this last season. Yeah. You kind of wonder, too, if his name is not dangled a bit, maybe for a trade. Again, that's a large class. And you kind of wonder, okay, well, another season bias. Does the NHL pour in some more revenue? Does that increase the salary cap? And therefore, where it's not as big of a deal anymore? I don't know. The St. Louis Blues are trending towards a brick wall, per se, in terms of, what this roster could look like. So this is they'll be back next year. They'll be back as a top 3 contender, in my opinion. Question's going to be what happens after next year. Was this all part of the proverbial plan, per se, or is this just kind of smoke and mirrors? And, again, we'll be looking back at this in a couple years and going, what the heck were we so afraid of? I don't know. But St. Louis still very successful under Craig Berube, and they will continue to be the biggest thorn in the sides of Minnesota hockey fans, as I'm sure that is our next topic.
Yeah, 109 points, 49 wins for them, 22 losses, 11 overtime losses for the Blues. Sitting at number 2 on this list, 53 wins, 22 losses, 7 overtime finishes, a .689 winning percentage, plus 57 goal differential, 113 points, 31-8-2 at home, 22-14-5 on the road, and 5-4 in shootout attempts. It's the Minnesota Wild. They are
the franchise.
Yeah, they are currently sitting at 6.59 in projected cap space. Let's run you through it here. Of course, Connor Dewar did just get a 2-year deal at $800,000 per year.
Good deal.
Did you know, Nick? Kevin Fiala is an RFA.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Nick Bukestad and Nick Delorier are the only remaining UFAs on the back end. Jacob Middleton is an RFA. Jordy Ben, he's gone. He's a UFA. And then Marc-Andre Fleury is the only other UFA. The Minnesota Wild have $12.74 million in dead cap, which will become $14.7 million the 2 seasons following, and then $1.67 million for 3 seasons after that, which is kind of an issue. After next season, it's Tyson Jost and Matt Boldy and Brandon Duhaime, who are RFAs, Freddie Gaudreau, Matt Dumba, Dmitry Kulikov, who are UFAs, and then Kalen Addison's also an RFA that following season as well, too. You know, it's interesting. You look at the Kevin Fiala situation. Somebody would definitely have to be moved to make room, at least for this year. Then next year, Matt Dumba and Dmitry Kulikov are both off the books. But then you have Kalen Addison and Matt Boldy who need to be re-signed, and question marks with Tyson Jost. A lot of issues trying to keep number 22 in a Minnesota Wild sweater here, notwithstanding. So, Nick, obviously, I want you to comment on that. But beyond that, the Wild have the Wild have a first, 2 seconds, a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and no seventh this year. But besides Kevin Fiala, regardless of him, what did the Minnesota Wild need to do this offseason in general? I mean, I know it's extremely tied to him and Marc-Andre Fleury, but what else, you know?
So I think down the middle is an issue. You kind of wonder if Marco Rossi is going to get another crack at the can, per se. You wonder what the future is like for Kalen Addison, too, also on the back end. I'm not as certain that Dmitry Kulikov is going to be on this roster when it gets October either. I know that despite what we were looking at as being a pretty good third pairing between him and John Merrill, let's just say derailed pretty badly towards the end of the season. So there's some different tweaks you can do here. But again, when you've got almost $13 million in not available cap space because of some buyouts, some other guys, I won't mention their names, it does hamper things. And there's, again, do you make these moves to retain one player for a year? Or do you just say, hey, let's get some assets? Could we get some maybe veteran help? Do we get maybe some younger help?
Sam Henches, clearly.
Clearly not. Anyway, at least as of right now, who knows? I could be getting pointed and laughed at in about 6 months.
Speaking of that, if I would be remiss, sorry to interrupt you, but the non-roster roster hopefuls, of course, Marco Rossi, Adam Beckman are probably the 2 forward names that come to mind there. And then Kyle Rao has always been serviceable. But really, I wanted to mention Pavel Novak, by the way. I don't know if anybody got a chance to notice this. He did say on Twitter, "Hello, everyone. I was wondering how to release this information and share my feelings," talking about how difficult it was. He said, "Unfortunately, my health condition does not allow me to prepare for next season. I was diagnosed with an oncological," for those who don't know what oncological, it means cancer, or cancerous disease a few days ago, and will soon begin treatment. The coming months will not be easy for me, but I firmly believe that everything will turn out well. I will be back stronger. Please respect my privacy." So wishing Pavel Novak the best. He's in Kelowna with the Rockets. So wishing him the best as he moves forward, and hopefully we see him one day in a Wild sweater. But Nick, continuing on, we talked about Marc-Andre Fleury, Jacob Middleton, Kevin Fiala. I got to imagine one of those guys will stay at some point. Bill Guerin will try to make one of them happen. Sounds like Kevin Fiala is the long shot. Between Fleury and Jacob Middleton. Long shot. Yeah, between Fleury and Middleton, who do you want to keep here?
Middleton.
Yeah, I agree.
Middleton, to me, really helped to balance out that top 4 on the defensive end for Minnesota, which, it needed it after the Ryan Suter debacle. Again, no phone calls answered, I guess. New phone, who dis? About that. But no, what it can do is, and to me, for Fleury, would I like him back? Sure. Do I think we need him? Not necessarily. If there's maybe one part you could do away with, I think Cam Talbot, there's been enough conversation about how the Wild handled that. I've had my own opinions on that as well. I have nothing against Marc-Andre Fleury, but again, you're talking a tight cap situation, so one's got to go.
Zane McIntyre, who's 29, Derek Barbio, who's 23, Hunter Jones is 21, and Jesper Wallstedt, newly signed at age 19.
So, and Jesper Wallstedt, who is going to be the goalie of the future, and you don't get picked as a goalie in the first round if we don't look pretty good from everything that we've heard. In fact, I think it was the Hockey News put him as like the 19th best prospect in the entire NHL's channel. Marco Rossi, I think, made it as in the top 10. I think he was 7 or 8. So it looks good 2 years, 3 years from now. But it's going to be tough. Again, I said it last week. There's zero chance that Kevin Fiala's in a Wild sweater next season. But again, with a prized asset, maybe you can turn one into a few and plug some different holes with some unfortunately cheaper options. And you just kind of hope that you can strike some gold with that. That's where the Wild are at. There is not a ton of changes, which is good. The bad news is the change, you're at a point in the franchise where you're building something and then you decide to put your own brick wall in front of you. That's the crappy part. So
young guys are going to have to step up. I still think the move was the right one by Bill Guerin, but you have 1 or 2 years that just the math just doesn't work out for a player or two, unfortunately. And right now that's Kevin Fiala. So moving to our last team very quickly, $25.69 million in projected cap space, finishing the season, doing pretty darn well, if I do say so myself. Plus 78 goal differential, 119 points, 56 wins, 19 losses, 7 overtime losses. That's the Colorado Avalanche, who are currently getting ready for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. They are going to lose somebody. They have 6 UFAs, 2 RFAs on the forward side, and 3 UFAs on the defensive side, and 1 UFA and Darcy Kemper in goal. So they are going to lose somebody. We've kind of talked about this a little bit. I don't think Nazem Kadri is back.
No.
In a sweater. How about Nico Sturm? What an opportunity he's got coming up here in the next couple of days. Wishing him the best of luck. Jack Johnson, Josh Manson, Ryan Murray on the back end are the UFAs. Nico Sturm, Nichushkin, Kadri, Darren Helm, Cogliano, Andre Burakovsky are the UFAs in the front. And Arturi Lehkonen, it's hard to see him staying, although he is an RFA, so don't know what they're going to do about that. And Nicholas
Lehkonen staying.
Yeah, and Nicholas Abe-Kubel, who's been an RFA and a healthy scratch in the Stanley Cup Final off and on here. He's the other RFA as well, too. I think it's safe to say Colorado's in win now mode, and it's working out. Yeah, next season, I mean, any quick talking points here? I mean, not much to say about Colorado, it's...
So, and again, with Colorado, and Wild fans don't know what this is like, so bear with us. When you win a cup, I don't think as a management you care so much about the roster entirety. That's sort of your ticket and admission to hoist the Stanley Cup, as you understand that you're going to lose some quality players. And whether Colorado wins or loses the cup, there are going to be pieces that are not going to stick around. Ironically, there's 2 pieces, one that is due for one now, and there's one that's not due for one for another year that are going to be their offseason priorities now. One is Darcy Kemper. He will be, I think, one of their biggest, but also you got to make Nathan McKinnon happy. He took a team-friendly bridge contract at $6.3 million. He will not be taking that same team-friendly contract extension. And so when you pair that with some expensive guys, the defense like Hale McCarr making $9 million, Sam Girard at $5 million till 26, 27. Some of them were here with Eric Johnson at 6, Devon Taves at 4.1, Curtis McDermott 9.87. So you have some decisions here. Mikko Ratton's making 9.2, Landeskog $7 million for quite some time. So this roster is going to get expensive and quick. And so at the end of it, Nazem Kadri, again, we talk about how well he played. He's going to find greener pastures quite literally in the bank account, as well as on the other side of Colorado somewhere. We'll see. It's all worth it if you're Avalanche fans, if you hoist the Stanley Cup either tomorrow night in Tampa or on Tuesday night in Denver. Doesn't look so good if you are not able to do so. And tough decisions and roster changes are made, and there could be quite a few of those coming up this postseason.
Certainly a great run nonetheless, and still, even if they do lose a couple pieces, they are somewhat loaded for bear, all things considered. Yeah. It's been pretty impressive. Tampa Bay is going to be in the same boat as well, and that's what it takes to be in a win-now mode. So let's see who's going to be the winner here, Nick. I have my 8 teams in order from 1 to 8 written down here. Central Division next season, why don't we start with number 8? I do have the Arizona Coyotes in that slot. Kind of curious. Who do you have there? All right. Figure that was a pretty consensus one. Number 7, I have the Chicago Blackhawks once again. I think they are in a decent spot, but I think they're moving in a different direction. Number 6, I have the Dallas Stars, actually.
I'm with you.
I really feel like this group, they have a couple of pieces. Joe Pavelski is going to have to continue to produce, but if Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn don't figure it out, if they can't resign John Klingberg, or if the goaltending for whatever reason is subpar, they're one injury or one piece not producing away from having a poor season and missing the playoffs in a very honorable fashion. So I do have the Dallas Stars at number 6. Number 5, I have the Winnipeg Jets. I think they make some improvements, but I don't think that they get over the hump. I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the 5th spot and they still miss the playoffs or just barely sneak in that second wild card, So that's what I have. Number 4, I have the Nashville Predators. I actually like the Preds. I really do. I do think they have a lot of pieces to really work with. They're gonna have to get Philip Forsberg re-signed, but if Connor Ingram can continue to be healthy and UC Saros continues to play in form, I think there's a lot of pieces. Now, Duchesne and Johansson have to continue to produce like they did this season, and a couple other pieces have to continue to have good years. But I have high hopes for Nashville. I think they're going to rebound, and John Hines is really putting essentially his career on the line, I think, in year number 1, trying to make a run there for the Predators. Number 3, I have the Minnesota Wild. I think
there's no way you're thinking in my head, because then it's 2 St. Louis, 1 Colorado.
Correct. And
we're supposed to fight on this part of the podcast. What is this?
Yeah, the reason I have Minnesota at 3, and I'm not that high on St. Louis next year, to be honest with you. I just think
not that we're high on St. Louis. It's the fact, how do you replace Fiala's production?
It's just there's too many question marks for Minnesota. Marco Rossi could come in and be extremely effective. Kalen Addison could get his first real crack at the lineup because they might move some guys and they're going to look really good. Jacob Middleton could come back and Marc-Andre Fleury could be back. They both could be back, right. So Minnesota is a wild card spot where they could really finish anywhere from, I would say, 2nd to 4th, maybe, but I still think they are going to be a playoff team this season, and St. Louis is going to kind of pick up the pieces in there as well. And Colorado, they're still going to be good.
Right.
Still going to be good. So, Nick, with that being said, a little bit of a lengthier show, but I think that will do it for episode 117. As we just passed the midnight hour, it is now Sunday. For those who are wondering, Stanley Cup Final Game 6 tonight on Sunday, 7 o'clock Central Time. Game 7, if needed, in Colorado. Tuesday, 7 o'clock is puck drop. For that one, our show will be recorded Thursday night. Should come out sometime, probably on Friday, and we'll keep you tuned for everything. Nick, anything else to add on the show?
I want to go to sleep.
I want to go to sleep too. And hopefully we are talking about a winner from the West for a Stanley Cup champion. That's all I have to say about that. For Nick Maxon, I'm Noah Grant, and we will see you soon in the den.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from
Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it. He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.